So my name is John. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Elections Committee Chair. Welcome to the question and answer forum that my Elections Committee has worked hard to help host for winter quarter elections 2015. Let me explain the rules to the forum. Candidates will be given 2 minutes to answer each question that I ask them. And when there's 15 seconds left for them, the gavel will tap like so. And when you run out of time, the gavel will bang like so. Cool. As this event is being recorded, please remain as quiet as possible or I will have to ask you to leave. So to start off, Ennis, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what slate you are representing, your major, your year, and a fun fact about yourself. Just basic introduction.
Sounds good. Hi everyone, my name is Ennis. I'm a third-year current transfer student here at the University of California, Davis. My major is neurobiology, physiology, and behavior with a minor in philosophy. I'm planning eventually to go to medical school. I'm applying this upcoming summer. And I'm with the SMART slate. And a fun fact about me was I lived in Northern Africa and Libya for 4 years.
How's everyone doing? I'm Gabriel Johnson. I am also a third-year transfer student at UC Davis. I'm an economics major, and I am a double minor in mathematics and global disease biology. I am running with Smart Coalition, and an interesting fact about me is I am from St. Paul, Minnesota.
Hi, my name is Savan Nahabedian. I'm a first-year biochemistry student. I'm from Redwood City, California. I'm running independent, and a fun fact about me is that I'm a huge Giants fan.
Hi, I'm Sarah Priano. I'm running with SMART. I'm a second-year Community and Regional Development and Women and Gender Studies double major with a minor in Italian. And a fun fact about me is that I'm an Italian dual citizen, except for I identify more with my Syrian roots because my only living grandmother is Syrian.
Hi, my name is Danielle May Santiago. I am running also with the SMART Coalition. I'm a third-year student here at Davis. I'm double majoring in political science and philosophy with a minor in human rights. Fun fact about myself, I actually eat pizza backwards, crust first.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Miguel Guerrero. I'm a third-year econ poli-sci double major. I'm running with the SMART Coalition. And a fun fact about myself, I'm a big dork. I really love Star Wars, and yeah, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. We'll go with that.
Great. Thank you so much, candidates. So we'll start off with the easy question first. What do you hope to accomplish as an ASUCD senator? Miguel, go ahead.
I think first and foremost, one of the things that I'd like to accomplish as an ASUCD senator is just to make ourselves more present for the student body. I think that the association is currently, the image is not favorable to the public, and that's something that I'd like to dedicate my hard work to, is to make the association be more representative of the students, be more representative of its voices.
Thank you. Danielle, go ahead.
I hope to accomplish while as a senator on the table is a more inclusive environment, and I'm sure all of my other members here on the coalition, including Savan, will agree that with the current campus climate, we really need to foster a more inclusive environment for all of our students. And I hope to do that through events, my platforms that I have running, etc., things like that. So a more inclusive environment representing all students, as Miguel has said, with all of their interests in mind.
Thank you. Sarah, what do you hope to accomplish as an ASUCD senator?
I hope to accomplish a lot of what my fellow candidates have said. Definitely inclusive environment on campus, because I think that's one of the most important aspects of our community is being inclusive, but also advocating for students on campus and continuing to do so. Definitely with representing the student body, I want to advocate for the things that are most important to them. Also making ASUCD more accessible. So not only transparency, but also accessibility. And the communication between the different areas on our campus, because a lot of times those in like one end of the campus will not know those in the other end, and increasing communication between everybody.
Great, thank you so much. Savan, go ahead.
So I want to echo much of what's been said by my fellow candidates already. I really want to represent students and to make sure that students feel that ASUCD represents them. And I want to make sure that students feel that ASUCD is an important part of campus, and that students feel that they're a part of ASUCD. I would hope that students are more involved in elections and campaigns, and I want students to feel like they have a stake in their student government and that their student government serves them.
Great, thank you so much. Gabriel, what do you hope to accomplish as an ASUCD senator?
Yeah, without being repetitive of what my peers have said, obviously speaking about transparency. So one, as far as transparency, allowing and conveying and communicating with students in and around campus about what's happening in ASUCD so they can become active participants in the process, as well as also allowing for more venues for student input. I know we spoke about this previously, but allowing for whether it be town halls and those type of things, as well as effective outreach. So creating more students that want to get actively engaged in some way or some capacity in ASUCD, so that we can grow, so we can regrow it and be back to where we were before.
Great, thank you. Ennis, go ahead.
As an incoming transfer student, there's a few things I'd like to accomplish that are near and dear to me. One is facilitating the smoother transition of transfer students academically and socially. The other one is increasing the resources for our pre-med students. There are plenty of resources, but a lot of them are really inaccessible and extraordinarily competitive. As well as, not to be redundant, but given the current state that we're in, we can see that ASUCD is in, unfortunately, a sad state right now. And had I not had the friends that were affiliated with ASUCD as a transfer student, I definitely would have known about ASUCD. So I would like to advertise more for ASUCD, explain to students what we do here, why we are here, why your voice matters, why your vote matters. And I would also, given the current situations that are happening on campus, try and foster an environment of tolerance of all ideas, regardless of what they are. And yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Candy. So my next question, since you guys have all brought up ways or ideas to go outreach to students, another question is that the students of ASUCD feel that the current student government fails to represent them. What can you do for the students of ASUCD to better represent them and their interests? Ennis, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Of course. So the way we can do this is by representing them, is by reaching out to them. Unfortunately, not every candidate is going to be able to represent the whole entire campus. That is why we have 12 different members on the Senate floor. So for me, one thing that I've been doing and will continue to do is reach out to transfer students through the Transfer Reentry and Veterans Program, reach out to pre-medical students, reach out to the communities that you feel you're closest to. And in my case, I've been reaching out to a bunch of different organizations, ranging from MAPS to ASA, PSA, MSA, the Mesa community as a whole, all underrepresented communities, and hearing what their needs are and addressing those needs. If we're not reaching out to our community, they don't feel like they have a voice, and if they don't feel like they have a voice, then we're not doing our job.
Great. Gabriel, would you like to
Yeah. One of the ways is just effectively reaching out and going to the clubs and multiple student groups on campus, as well as also, this may sound a little crazy, but actually just listening to what they have to say. Frequently we get tied up in telling students what's going on and those type of things instead of just taking the back seat and listening to the concerns and taking that in. I've been doing that especially recently with some of the communities that haven't been so heavily represented historically in ASUCD. As a personal member of the Black Student Union and a person who considers myself a member of the GLBTQIA/RC, I have made an effort of myself to go in there and ask what are some of the pressing issues and those type of things, and also asking how they like to see those things acted upon, instead of using ourselves and thinking we have the best judgment in making those actions upon them.
Savon,
So
what
this.
can you do for the students of ASUCD to better represent them and their interests?
Sorry. So this actually ties in with one of my platforms. One of the issues that I chose to run on was increasing the amount of people who are involved in an election, increasing the election turnout. And I think when you have less than 10% of students voting in an election, it's not a surprise that they feel that the entire student body feels like ASUCD doesn't represent them. I think that current election rules need to be relaxed in some states, and they need to be relaxed in the residence halls and in other areas. And if you allow people to campaign more freely and more openly, then more people will engage in the election, more people will vote, and they will have their voice heard. Because the best place to get their voice, for students to have their voice heard in ASUCD is during elections.
Great, thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about the fact that education plays a big role in this as well. So a lot of different people in ASUCD and outside of ASUCD are talking about reforming orientation. And I think orientation in places like orientation can be used as a place to talk about ASUCD, to educate our community on what ASUCD is. I know coming into the school, I had no idea. I knew there was some form of student government. I didn't know how it functioned or how I could be involved, but definitely finding places like orientation that we can easily access a large amount of the student body will help. Also, definitely listening, reiterating what Gabe said, but also stressing allyship and stressing the fact that we need to be an ally to communities that we are not a part of, and realizing what that actually means and how we need to educate ourselves and not ask others to educate us. And listening is really, really important.
Thanks. Danielle?
Continuing what Sarah said, everyone here at UC Davis is a part of a community of some kind. So hopefully, as my role as a senator, I would like to outreach to those communities and represent those communities, because everyone here is a part of a community, and the idea that ASUCD does not represent them is because we're not outreaching to specific communities. Additionally, with being a senator, and the role of a senator comes with adopting units, and I want to reform the role of what a senator is by taking an active role in adopting these units, really working one-on-one with their unit directors, making sure that their needs are met, therefore facilitating more effective representation. The SMART Coalition does work, the two first words of the SMART Coalition is students matter. So the main concern of ASUCD should be our students and the interests of our students. I also hope to increase accountability, because with the current state of our association, accountability is vital to making sure that senators meet the demands that they hope to run with when they get elected and throughout their entire term.
Great, thank you. Miguel, go ahead.
Awesome. So I mean, it's definitely been said across the board, and I think straight and forward to the point that we just need to better represent our student body, the communities. And something that I can say that I'm very proud of is that all the senators here at this table are representative of different communities, coming from different backgrounds, having been able to form different values, opinions, and that's what makes it beautiful, is that we all bring something different to the table. And that's a strength, and it also gives us as senators an opportunity to, as Sarah said, to learn more about these different communities, to become an ally. And to the heart of it, it really starts with the representation of the students, outreaching, being readily accessible, and just being present, just being willing and able to going back to the communities, because sometimes we do get caught up in bigger picture things, but remembering to stay true to our roots, stay true to the community.
Great, thank you. So starting with Miguel, can you describe the current state of ASUCD in your own words? A lot of our audience doesn't understand what the current state of ASUCD is in. So in your own words, just describe what you think.
Yeah. What I think it is, and it's been echoed throughout tonight during this forum, is that ASUCD is seen as not being representative of the student body, and that's really, to be quite frank, that's what it is. The students feel that the association is just an entity that lives up on the third floor. Something that's mentioned. I'm a tour guide, so that's just something that I say on a tour guide script to prospective students, and just generally it being an opportunity for students to get involved in leadership. An ASB, if you will. As we all remember in high school, like ASB was like a club. But that's something that needs to be, that culture needs to be changed. It needs to be a representative body of our students, and not just something that could be something you could easily put on a resume, or for something for a job application, but something that the students can believe in, something that they can associate with action, positive action, and things that are happening on campus, things that affect the students. So it's just a matter of, they don't feel like it's representative of the student body, that it's just an entity, it's just a registered student organization, whatever it may be. But that's how we need to go going forward.
I just, to be point blank and honest with all of you, I mean, as you can see, there's only exactly 6 senators here, and there's only exactly 6 spots that are open. I think that's representative of the state of our association, that people are seeing ASUCD as an entity that doesn't represent them, as we've all repeatedly said tonight, but also as something that they're not willing to achieve or try for. ASUCD is associated students. We are all students, so I think the association has kind of taken on this persona of being these very driven students, these people who need to go above and beyond their normal student workload. I mean, we're all taking units, we're all taking classes, and I think my fellow candidates and I have just seen the state of the association and want to change what the campus feels like, what the climate is like. Additionally, ASUCD has kind of taken on this personality. When I approached my communities telling them that I wanted to become a senator for the table, they're like, wow, that's a lot of stress, that's a lot of undue tasks that you have on your plate on top of being a student, working 3 jobs here on campus. I think that's really representative of why we need change, why we need our 6 representatives here to represent the students, to bring our campus back to where it was, where people aspired to be on the Senate table, where we had 12 or 15 candidates wanting to change our campus climate, wanting to make it better. So I think we need to return to the legacy that we had as ASUCD prior to this.
Thank you, Danielle. Sarah, can you describe the current state of ASUCD in your words?
So again, representing what I've seen and also my own opinion is that a lot of what ASUCD is pre-politician. It's people who, this is a step to the next thing. There are people who want to make genuine change, but a lot of it is working with administration, compromising, not being transparent a lot of the time, not representing. And like, again, like Danny said, like I went to my communities and I was like, I want to run for Senate. And they're like, no, don't do that. Like, that's a bad thing to do. And I was like, why? Because this is our representative space and this should be reclaimed for students. But also like the budget right now, like not having enough money, needing all of these different meetings to be happening to like reallocate things, and definitely shifting. There needs to be a shift, and I think people right now, the current state in the campus thinks that ASUCD needs a serious shift, and moreover that they're not accountable to students right now because of the inaccessibility.
Thank you. Savannah, go ahead.
So I think Sarah and Danielle brought up really good points. Sarah brought up the budget, and when you go to ASUCD commission meetings or Senate meetings, a large portion of the time is spent what happened to the budget, what happened to the reserves, and that speaks to the need of transparency and accountability in ASUCD. And something that I think all the Senate candidates on this table will agree is that when after this election, we will all have a responsibility to make sure that more people run for Senate, more people are involved with ASUCD. And I think that the elections that Danielle was talking about, where you would have 20 people running for a seat, it is no secret that there are 6 candidates running for 6 seats right now. And that does speak very heavily about the state of the ASUCD and how ASUCD interacts with students. Because of the thousands, tens of thousands of students that ASUCD represents, not very many of them are involved.
Great. Thanks. So, Gabriel, can you describe the state of ASUCD in your words?
Yeah. I think my peers prior to me have pretty much hit on the head, but a couple of words that come to my mind is that transitional. So it seems to be that ASUCD seems to be on this transitional stage where it can go either to far left or far right. And the idea is to go far right versus far left, and that it could either become a completely invisible organization, where right now it seems to be almost as a figurehead, where it just seems to place a position and serve no purpose, i.e. why a lot of students are saying it's not representative of them, as well as right now it seems to be very homogeneous as far as what Sarah spoke about, as many people being of the same major and the same background, versus a more diverse group of people from different majors, backgrounds, ideologies. So it allows us to better represent the student body and also make more effective and more smart decisions, as well as much more efficient meetings. So that's where I see it.
Go ahead.
So I don't think this issue just started right now. If we look at the previous election, there was only 7 people that ran last election. And the one before that, we actually had larger numbers. So we're seeing this downward trend of candidates that are running, and we need to ask ourselves why this is happening and how we can stop it. As we see this downward trend, we should have remedied the situation in our previous election, but yet we see that this downward trend is continuing, and I think it's up to us right now, and up to ASUCD as a whole, to advocate for what we do. A huge problem, the root of many problems nowadays, is the lack of knowledge. If somebody says, oh no, I know what ASUCD is, but ASUCD doesn't represent me, then they're part of the problem. If you understand what ASUCD is, but you don't want to do anything about it, that says a lot. Like I said, I was a transfer student, and I would have definitely not known about ASUCD. I was kind of came in with the mindset, I'm here to get my bachelor's, to go to medical school. Student government was the last thing that crossed my mind. But because I had friends from the community that were active in ASUCD and they filled me in, it made me realize, wow, I can make a change. And the reason why I am running is because I was approached by people from my community who told me, hey, we need a voice on the Senate floor, and we think you'd be perfect for it. And it really hit home. I mean, I was flattered to know that this large community wanted me to represent them. And I realized, you know, I'm not just a representative for this community, I'm a representative for so many communities, and we have the power to do so much. And I think when you look at ASUCD, you see a diverse student body that's up there. And if we look at us now, like Miguel said, we're a very diverse group. And I think if we work efficiently, as I know we can, we will make a difference in bettering the image of ASUCD.
Thank you. So, a lot of you guys have talked about trying to go out and promote ASUCD, but why do you believe that you're qualified for this position? How many Senate meetings have you attended, and how familiar are you with the legislation process? Starting with that.
So I'm going to be completely honest. I was foreign to this whole entire concept until about 3-4 weeks ago. But in that short time, I was able to meet with current senators, people from ASUCD, and they explained to me how everything worked, and it was a lot to absorb all at one point. I was lucky enough to go to my first Senate meeting on divestment, and I attended the full thing, and it was pretty chaotic. And then the next Senate meeting, unfortunately, was canceled, so I wasn't able to attend that. I was able to attend the recent Senate meeting, which was this past Thursday, of course. And you know, I had to leave early because I had a midterm the next day. But in my time knowing about ASUCD, I tried to attend every single Senate meeting, as I will continue to, and hopefully, as it seems like we're all going to be elected, I hope, unless something happens, I will then in my upcoming quarters to be obviously at every Senate meeting. And the reasons why I feel like I can give this better image of ASUCD, because I feel like I have the personal traits as well as the resources to communicate to large groups of students. I would like to see myself as a very approachable individual, and I have a huge community base as well as a huge social community base that I can reach out to, and I believe that this is an issue that must be tackled from the grassroots level. You know, just word of mouth to students is a huge thing. When you talk to somebody that's actually affiliated in ASUCD and they explain to you what we do and the importance of what we do, it's going to hit home with them rather than passing them out a flyer. You give somebody a flyer, they're going to look at it. They might not pay attention too much to it, but when we approach them, we shake their hand, we talk to them, and we explain to them the importance of what we do and the importance of their voice and their contribution to ASUCD. I think it's going to hit home with them.
Thank you.
As far as my experience, as has been echoed before prior, and I said earlier, I'm a transfer student, so this is my second quarter here. As in my first quarter, I wasn't too involved. I was trying to get adjusted to this crazy system known as the quarter system. But over the last couple of weeks, I've been to about 2 or 3 meetings personally. So I'm getting to learn the process, and I've also been been privileged enough to meet a lot of friends over the last quarter and a half that have been part of the ASUCD system. But also personally, I, in my previous community college, was the president of my student government. So I've learned to become fairly familiar with those processes and be able to adapt those to the way ASUCD works. But as far as reaching out, like I said, I've become a very amicable person, as well as I'm also involved in a lot of different communities, and because of the intersectionality of many people, and including myself, from the trans community to the Black community to the queer community, and understand that being able to personally relate to everyone that you meet, and understanding that as a senator, every person you meet is an opportunity for them to learn about the association, and also potentially find a way for how they fit in it. It may not be a senator, but it may be a position on a commission or a committee, or in any way, shape, or form. But understand that everyone has a place, and that every person that you meet is an opportunity for them to learn about the association and to expand that.
Thank you. Siobhan.
So I'm a first-year student, and I'm not going to hide the fact that I haven't been around on this campus for very long. But this past quarter, I've been on staff for a current senator, and he's given me extensive knowledge on how the legislative process works. I've attended all of the commission meetings he's wanted me to go to. I've attended his Senate meetings where he's proposed bills, and I know what the human toll of being on Senate is like. He works very hard, and he works very long, hard hours, and that's something that candidates need to know about before they throw their hat in to become senator. And the reason why I think I'm qualified to be on Senate is because I'm a part of a community. I'm a part of two communities that don't usually get a lot of representation on Senate. I'm not going to be ashamed of the fact that I'm a first-year student, and there aren't any first-year students on Senate this year, and there haven't been very many first-year students. And the fact that 25% of the population is our first-year students, and they don't have the representation that they do on Senate. You can write off freshmen and say that they are unqualified and they're inexperienced, and that is true. We don't have the experience I don't have the experience that other third and fourth years can have, but we will bring But I will bring a new voice to the table.
Thank you, Siobhan. Sarah, go ahead.
So the legislative process, I've definitely been learning about this quarter because I have not been involved in a lot of ASUCD spaces before. Unfortunately, the meetings are the worst night of the week for me because I'm co-directing Vagina Our Stories, which is an amazing production, and I cannot miss those meetings, and I have a meeting right before. Sometimes I can go to the first hour, but it's been a very difficult quarter trying to balance learning about Senate and my other obligations. Definitely learned a lot through this process, though. I've put myself in positions where I want to learn and I want to be engaged. And I am part of a lot of communities on campus that are not traditionally represented through ASUCD, outside of ASUCD, and just like the Vagina Monologue, or the Vagina Our Stories. And what I've understood of the legislative process is that it has to be introduced by a senator, ask the vice president, and then also has to be approved by 50% of the commissions, and has to have 7 senators vote for it. But if it's a budget or a spending bill, or if it's a spending bill, then it has to be 2/3. So I've learned a lot in my time this quarter, and I'm still learning, but I know some.
So I am quite familiar with the legislative process. My first year, I actually lived with former Senator now, Mariah Watson. So I went to quite a few meetings with her for that. So I kind of advocated for ASUCD in a separate location. I wasn't really part of anything in ASUCD my first year, just because I was trying to get used to the quarter system and used to being a college student, just transitioning out of a small town in San Diego. Then my sophomore year, I was actually Mariah Watson's intern. So I helped her facilitate her programs, her initiatives, introduce legislation, things like that. So I did attend to quite a few Senate meetings. This past quarter, I wasn't able to attend because I was getting used to my upper division class levels, things like that, retaining, being a student here, getting good grades, trying to uphold my academic integrity here. I have advocated for ASUCD, like I said, from a remote position. I think that not being in a pivotal role in a lot of things in our association gives me an advantage in terms of I've lived my life here in Davis as a student. I see what needs to be fixed. I see what should be fixed, what we can do to help. A lot of students here just think about why should I care about ASUCD? I'm just going to go about my daily life. I need to get to class. I need to have midterms. I mean, we all have midterms. We all have finals. We all have internships. I've advocated for the working student. That's part of my platforms, as upholding 2 jobs here on campus while trying to maintain my grades is a very relatable thing for all of us students. Just trying to maintain financial responsibility is something that I think we also need to address as an association. I'm also part of Greek Life, so I recognize that there's been a very strained relationship between Greek Life and ASUCD. Greek Life oftentimes doesn't see the benefits of ASUCD and how it can help them, so I want to improve that relationship. So that's what.
Thank you. Miguel, why do you believe you're a qualified candidate?
Excuse me. Well, first and foremost, I just wanted to say also the winter quarter as well has also been a very busy one for me, and unfortunately I haven't been able to attend a lot of ASUCD Senate meetings, having been able to balance class during those meeting times, as well as having other commitments. For example, I'm a part of the Lounge Lizards a cappella group, and something that I've been trying to hash out with them in terms of with this campaign is being involved with that, and also being an ASUCD Senate, becoming a part of ASUCD Senate. But me being a novice into the political scene, that's not stopping me from being motivated to get to know more about the association, having been able to talk with current ASUCD senators, and also try to do my own research in terms of how the organization works and the issues that are bothering the students. And it's that passion and that enthusiasm that I've been trying to make apparent, that I want to be the driving force of the type of work that I want to do in this during a tenure as a senator. In terms of why I'm qualified, I'm representative of multiple student communities, as like many of my peers. I'm heavily involved in the UC Davis Filipino American community, as well as the Greek community. I'm a member of Chi Rho Omicron, which is the Filipino interest fraternity on campus. As I said before, I sing for the Lounge Lizards, and I work as a UC Davis tour guide. So I try my best to represent myself as best as possible for the university, and I really feel that all of these have given me the opportunity to be representative of multiple opinions, talk to multiple students, really get to know what's on their mind, because that's what it is first and foremost, getting in rooted and in touch with the students. And I feel that I'm approachable, and that could easily be a great attribute in this position.
Thank you, Miguel. So, starting with Miguel, this is a question that often comes up because ASUCD is currently facing a budget crisis. So, how experienced are you with the ASUCD monetary situation, and how do you plan on addressing this issue? Second, what are some new ideas that will allow you to bring more funds to ASUCD rather than just working on slashing budgets?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah. So, it's a two-pronged question. First one being, how do you plan on addressing the monetary situation of ASUCD? And the second one being, what are some new ideas that will allow you to bring more funds to ASUCD rather than slashing budgets? You can answer when you're ready.
Okay. To my understanding, in terms of the ASUCD monetary situation, it's not so much that we're in like a huge financial crisis, like in debt or in a huge financial situation, but it's definitely something that should be concerned with any budget. You want to be able to make a considerable amount and not overspend your limits. So my limited understanding, to be quite frankly, is that to be honest, is that that I'm trying to find the words to actually say it correctly, but oh my gosh, we're not, so to be blunt, we're not in debt, but definitely we could be saving more. and the more that we could save could be used to come back to the association and be used to funnel back towards the students. In terms of new ideas, and new ideas to not just cut programs, it really just starts with being more communicative. I'd like to be, since I am a novice in the political scene, I would like to just be more communicative and open to be able to have the opportunities to communicate with unit directors and the different aspects of what ASUCD funds, so that first and foremost, their concerns are heard, and also I can use my position so that it makes what the different units are doing more apparent to the student body, so that they can be more aware of what the association does and how many different aspects of student life ASUCD really impacts in the normal UC Davis student's life.
Great. Thank you. Danielle, go ahead.
Continuing with what Miguel said about saving more, I think as an association we need to work on not necessarily thinking about this impending doom about our budget, but saving more and being proactive so that doesn't happen. We are a nonprofit, but that doesn't mean a nonprofit can't make money to sustain itself. So I think when it comes to more funds rather than slashing, we need to have a more active dialogue between all of the unit directors, really looking at what they're doing on a holistic level rather than just within themselves and what their own goals are, seeing what how they can work together, because there are some units that are carrying more of the team on their back than other units, and really trying to approach a more saving more money approach than slashing and cutting budgets.
Thank you, Danielle. Sarah, go ahead.
I agree with what everybody else said already. So saving and also creating revenue is really, really important. So creating a good dialogue between the unit directors, having maybe once a quarter meetings between all of them to understand that not just your unit needs money, it's this huge, broad, community of units that all have funding that they need. And so understanding that, maybe this time around I'm not going to have the funding that I need right now, but instead I'm going to let this other unit have this money because they need it. Definitely being more fiscally responsible in that way. So right now we're not in a crazy situation in debt or anything like that, but if we run into a financial crisis, I think a few years ago the tower of the KDVS station broke down, or maybe it was recently, I can't remember the time frame of that. And if something like that were to happen right now, we don't have the funding, and that could put us in a seriously bad situation. So being aware that we're not in a horribly, we're not in the red zone yet, but we also need to be conscious that we are not prepared to handle serious financial crises. And so the ASUCD is a nonprofit, and nonprofits can make money, but it's important that we view how we distribute it as very important, because people and units need to be fiscally responsible as well as us, and definitely conveying this information and being more transparent, like we have said.
Thank you, Sarah. Sivan, go ahead.
So I definitely think that ASUCD is in a budgetary crisis that does warrant immediate action. I don't necessarily think that the senators and ASUCD can wait to address any issues, and I'm not implying that any of the candidates on the table said that it's not dire, but at the same time, I'm not a unit director. I'm not an expert on the budgetary crises that face unit directors. But I do know that I have been working with Senator Alex Lee, whose staff I'm on, and there is legislation in the Senate to be increasing dialogue between unit directors and senators. There's legislation that says that you need to talk with unit directors before you can amend their budget, and they have to be on and that they have to be submitting reports to ASUCD, and I fully support those bills because they do create dialogue, and I think creating dialogue between the unit directors and ASUCD senators who are setting the budget is important. And I think in order to get out of this financial crisis that we're in, you have to, on one hand, unfortunately, you do have to combine units or slash budgets. We have to spend less and save more, and you do have to increase revenue, not just by you have to increase revenue, and you can't solve the crisis you're in just by cutting units fundings and swiping the carpet up from under them and telling them that there is no funding for the next year. That it has to be not too gradual of a change, because we do need to make these changes quickly in order to ensure financial safety for ASUCD, but we need to be making these correctly and we have to be informed when we make these decisions.
Thank you, Savannah. Gabriel, go ahead.
Yeah, so as far as the budget, from what I've heard during Senate meetings, we are currently running, I won't say in the red, but in a deficit of sorts over the last quarter to carrying over this quarter. So I think some of the ways we can effectively do that, we can frequently say saving, but what does that look like? And I think frequently what that looks like isn't necessarily saving, but as we said, sometimes we may have to consolidate units or things of that sort, but more in particular, finding creative ways to fund new initiatives or bills that we do want to have passed. Because frequently, what's happening, from what I've seen in the meetings, is that there are bills being passed and that we're funding, or trying to figure out ways to fund, versus trying to figure out creative ways to use some of the capital or students and things like that that we may already have in order to get those things accomplished. Also, speaking about what Savannah was talking about with the union director and senators' relationships, and then I think that extends it to holding senators accountable with interacting with union directors, and creating strong partnerships so they can effectively figure out ways to fund those units, whether it be through grant writing or finding out different pools of funding that comes outside of ASUCD to help support and maintain those, as well as also and then as far as like creative ideas to give funding or to create the fund or to increase funds in ASUCD, I think frequently some of the things we miss on campus that a lot of students have talked about is like that student experience as far as like big events that happen in and around campus that engage both the Davis community, which is a large part of our experience on Davis campus, as well as the students, which I know a lot of the other UCs have, as far as getting whether it be musical acts or just creating events where we may charge a small fee in order for students to participate, but it also allows us as ASUCD body to interact with the students.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Yeah.
Ennis, go ahead.
So we're definitely going to have to work with the Business and Finance Commission as they handle a lot of our spending. We need to get that transparency, see where the money's going, and understanding what this money is being used for. Is it being used for the right reasons, or is it being used inefficiently? And of that money, a lot of it's being wasted. We have a large budget, $11.8 million, and with that money, we can accomplish an enormous amount of feats. So we definitely need to understand what is happening with this money, where it's going, if it can be cut. And what I'm saying is we're not cutting spending, we're cutting the inefficient spending. We want to make sure that this money is being used for useful reasons. At the same time, we need to make sure we're generating revenue for ASUCD, so we need to look at what we've done in the past and what has worked. If we've done a fundraiser that has yielded a small amount of funds, there's no point in investing in something like that when we've gone a different route in the past and we've been able to generate large amount of funds for ASUCD. So I think it's definitely going to have to be a combination of cutting that excess spending as well as looking what works for us to raise funds, as well as working with other organizations that we fund and talk to them and say, hey, what can you do to generate funds from your end, so they can be less reliant on us. And I think a mixture of all three of those will definitely put us in a more physically responsible state.
Thank you, Ennis. So, starting with Sarah, I think to your right. What progress have you made with your platforms, and how do you plan to hold yourselves accountable every week towards actualizing your platforms?
Okay, so my two platforms are first creating a more inclusive UC Davis, and the way that I am going to achieve that is by creating producing more tampons and pads and putting those on restrooms around campus, because I feel like periods are very stigmatized on campus, and over 50% of our campus gets periods every month. And by stigmatizing this, it can cause a lot of harm in our community, which also causes it to be silenced. And accompanying this change, I would also like to put up signage pertaining to gender performance and gender neutrality, because not everybody that has a period or has a vagina identifies as a woman, and vice versa. So it's really important that we start talking about these issues on campus and start breaking the silence around these things. For that platform, I have already started talking to a few people on campus about how I will be going about that. The WRC already has tampons and pads accessible in their restrooms, so I want to talk to them about how often do they have to put them out, and also talking to facilities and management about how to do this. We already have tampons accessible all around campus, except for they cost money, and I think it's really unfair that we have to pay for something that we don't get to choose. And tampons and pads, in my opinion, should be as accessible as tissue paper. And they should not be as stigmatized as they are right now. I mean, hiding them is it's funny. But, and then my second platform is Fossil Free UC. So there's been a lot of support on this campus, especially because we are so environmentally focused, to focus on a fossil-free UC. So that means divesting from fossil fuel industries, which the UC is currently heavily invested in right now. This movement has already started on a lot of other campuses, and and I want to help continue that on this campus.
So my two platforms are alcohol education at orientation and increasing voter turnout during elections. So as far as alcohol education at orientation goes, I've been to an ATOD meeting in the Student Health Center, and when I was at the meeting, the woman presenting the meeting and giving all this information spoke about how she wanted to provide alcohol education for especially first-year students, but to a lot of students who are not 21, and for a lot of students that the administration doesn't treat alcohol as necessarily a health issue, but treats it more as a delinquency issue. And she was talking about harm reduction for treating alcohol, because it is a very dangerous and pervasive drug that's all over college campuses, and whether the administration wants to, students will be drinking, and I believe that students are going to be making those choices, and students should make that choice consciously and know what their resources are. The Student Health Center has amazing resources for students who want to stay sober or get sober, and I think that ASUCD should work with the Student Health Center to announce these resources more and to spread the word about them. And my other platform is increasing voter turnout at elections, and it's very difficult to get that done, to get things like that done when you're not a senator, especially when you're running in elections. And I haven't been able to make much progress on that, but that's definitely something that I'm going to be working on as a senator if after the election, so that hopefully my changes can affect the next election, which will be fall 2015.
Thank you, Savon. Go ahead.
As far as my platforms, I'm running two platforms. One is increasing Black student applicants to the UCs, and the other one is increasing academic support spaces. So as far as increasing Black student applicants, what I've been doing already is I've been doing outreach to a lot of high schools, specifically through my Black Student Union, and also partnering up with the Student Retention Center and the ACE program, and figuring out ways how to effectively get those students bought in, as well as also leveraging some of the events we have going on campus, like the upcoming Black Youth Leadership Conference, and trying to get more students to come out to that to get them to come. But then also I've been leveraging. I've also gotten in contact with our current transfer student coordinator, one of transfer, Carlos Carter and Caden Carter, who have been working who they've recently been appointed to help with Black student retention and admission. So because right now we are at a 3% of Black students, which in a lot of areas that people haven't been from a lot of areas that people are at, that's not very representative of the areas they live in, nor is it very representative of California or the UC system in and of itself. As well as increased academic support areas. The one I've been working on off the bat has been I'm working with the Math series, the Math 20 series, the Math 21 series, and the Math 16 and 17 series. And I have been speaking and working with the Math Science Department and the council to see if we can create a creative way to get different spaces. As far as a larger space for support, which we're in the works right now, but it seems to be going through some processes to try to figure out what best works and timing. And then kind of speaking to your question, John, as far as asking how would we be held accountable. One of the things I was planning to do that I didn't explicitly outline was sending updates, whether it be through Facebook and giving updates through my social media account, or sending emails to respective listservs.
Thank you. Ennis, go ahead.
My two platforms are issues that are very near and dear to me. One of them is Transfers R Us, and the other one's Prep for Med. So for Transfers R Us, I want to facilitate smooth transition of transfer students both academically and socially. I was fortunate enough to come to UC Davis I knew a lot of people when I came here, so I was able to feel that nice, warm feeling when I came here. I was acclimated to the campus very quickly, and not many transfer students get to have that feeling, and I want to make sure everyone does. There's a few things that I want to do. On my first into my first Senate meetings, I had the VP from Academic Affairs. He spoke about wanting to work with transfer students as well, so I immediately flipped him a note as I left, and he emailed me. I contacted him back, and went to their Monday meeting, but for some reason, no one was there, and I sat for about 30 minutes. I'm assuming it was rescheduled and I wasn't filled in. And then we had this previous Monday, we had no school for President's Day, so I haven't been able to touch base with that, but that is definitely an avenue that I'm definitely going to be exploring, as well as working with the Transfer Reentry and Veterans program. I want to make sure that we can set up something on Transfer Day, because when I came to Transfer Day, it's when I really got sold about coming to UC Davis. I loved it here, but unfortunately, I felt like it was lacking in a few things. You know, we're told about how quick the court system is, but we don't really have that knowledge. Without setting up certain workshops, you know, going through a class syllabus, showing them how I personally had 2 midterms within my first 5 weeks here, and just showing that concrete visualization of what you're actually getting into, tips on working with your professors, and that in-classroom experience. The other one is Prep for Med. As I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of resources for pre-medical students, but a lot of these resources are extraordinarily competitive and really, really, really out of reach for certain students. So I'm in many organizations. I'm in Shifa Clinic, I'm in MAPS, and I want to work with all these organizations, as well as MESPEPs and the surgical internship program, to see what we can do about including more students into these amazing, amazing organizations.
Thank you, Ennis. Miguel, go ahead.
The overarching theme of both of my platforms is first the exposure and then the accessibility of student resources available on campus. My first platform is called Transition with Ease, and essentially what that is I'd like to pilot and develop this workshop at orientation that exposes both first years and transfers to the available academic resources that are available outside of your major, including, for example, student health and counseling services, or making tutoring at Denton Hall more well-known amongst students. So in terms of my progress with that, first and foremost, I needed to find a model of which to work with. So I did some research looking at specific programs, and luckily a student affairs officer I collaborate pretty closely with for the Asian American Studies Department, Britt Samita, showed me this program at Cal Poly Pomona, which is another quarter school, which I think would be easily applicable here at UC Davis. And essentially it's a class for first year students and transfers, exposing them to these resources of which I'm referring to. I don't think I have that much leeway to work towards changing requirements for across colleges, but I think a workshop would be very doable in terms of just having a time slot during orientation that can still accomplish those same purposes. Secondly, I wanted to test the legitimacy of something like this. So luckily I was able to talk with working with student housing, Joaquin Feliciano. He's currently the Office of Sorority and Fraternity Life. He's one of the coordinators, but he has a lot of experience working in student housing. And one of the main concerns that he brought up was that the deans of the different colleges are really in charge of orientation. So that's something that you have to work with. Just to kind of tie things up, maybe possibly making it a seminar to test and develop. And in terms of my second platform, making student resources accessible, I would just like to make an easy, navigatable, and accessible website that looks appealing to our students, rather than referring to multiple links for various student services on campus.
Thank you, Miguel.
So my platforms are threefold. The first being sexual violence, most especially in the Greek community. The Greek community is an environment that facilitates this heteronormative violence against both men and women. So I'm actively working with the president of IFC, Wolfgang. We are in constant contact. I've had multiple meetings with him. I'm also in constant contact with the Thomas and Joaquin, who are the coordinators of the Greek Life office. They host men's and women's groups that I don't think a lot of the Greek community knows about, where they can talk about these issues. So I really want to improve accessibilities for those things. Additionally, they are hosting multiple events and initiatives that I want to help them with. I really want to tackle issues with them on the issues of female empowerment, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a proud woman, violence against women, also masculinity in the Greek community, specifically the IFC chapters, in a way that they can assert what it means for them to be masculine. I know that each of the chapters have their own definitions of brotherhood, etc., and I want them to work collaboratively on that. Also attacking the issues of consent, because I think that's a big thing that can go beyond just the Greek community, but the Greek community is notorious for facilitating issues with what consent means. I'm actually working with Wolfgang, and it's an idea that we really want to get out to their IFC chapters of affirmative yeses rather than passive nos. So I'm working with them on that, and I really want to be an ally to that community, and especially the Greek community, because a lot of that goes unknown because of the violence that goes on. The second part of my platforms are working student passes. In terms of parking, I know that I'm a working student. I've spoken to many other students who either open or close their various units. Sometimes they have to pay for a full 2-hour pass and they don't have enough time, where the money they make from those 2 hours just goes to their parking pass, so there's no point in trying to buy a pass. So I'm working with TAPS with that. I actually have a meeting with them this week, and I have multiple dialogues with them in terms of email and electronic correspondence.
Thank you, Danielle. So this time starting with Sivan and moving to your right. If you could pick a unit to adopt, which one would you adopt and why?
Yeah, I think one of the greatest units that ASUCD has is the pantry, because the pantry serves a lot of students, and something as simple as having enough food to eat shouldn't be a struggle for a lot of students, but unfortunately it is. And I think that ASUCD does a great job by funding the pantry and by having that amazing resource for students. And I think that ASUCD should do everything it can to keep that. And I'd want to work with that unit to facilitate its growth and to facilitate its growth into a unit that more and more students know about and more students can use.
I personally say, if it was a unit to adopt, I would probably say the OASR, the Office of Advocacy and Student Representation, simply because that's something that I am a firm believer in, is representation. I think that's one of the most effective ways to get students involved in the process, which is one of the reasons why I chose to be a senator, is because one of my biggest passions is getting people involved in this process. We're known as college democracy. And understanding how that works and how they're able to more effectively leverage their voices, whether it's in support or against, for whatever they're trying to do.
Thank you. Thanks, go ahead.
So I'm going to have to echo what Sivan said, the pantry for sure. Last Senate meeting that I was in, I was fortunate enough to actually hear a presentation on the updates, all that I've done that has happened in the pantry. And so when I mentioned that I lived overseas for 4 years, unfortunately, we came back on difficult circumstances. We were technically refugees. I was homeless for about a month or so, and you don't really want to ever have to think about how am I going to provide for myself, how am I going to get through this next day. So when you hear about, when she was listing off some of the statistics, one of them that resonated with me was 50% of the students go through the pantry, and that's an extraordinary number. And we shouldn't have to worry about, are we going to have enough food to eat, and just seeing the direction that it's been taken, how they're trying to get healthier options. It's a phenomenal unit, and I think that is something I would definitely like to work with, along with other units, to continue furthering our outreach and accessibility to the Davis student body as a whole.
Thank you.
I too also want to work along with the pantry as well. I really admire what they do, and one of the things that I think that we can get multiple student communities involved to get exposure for the pantry, as well as just get other communities involved. Within the Greek community, for example, one of the Greek Week events is actually providing boxes for different chapters to fill with food items, and if we can see that and get that across different communities, different groups on campus, just to hop out a cause like this and go to their members and fill up food, that could really help the pantry a lot. And just another thing, just for fun, but something that I would also like to work with is the Entertainment Council. I think that'd be really cool. I'm a performer. I love singing, and just being able to work with that and create a fun space for students for our campus, so that we can get a crack in here in Davis, to be honest, and for students to say like, hey, that happened at my campus, like to have a concert of like one of the latest musical artists like Heartbreak Gang or Ed Sheeran. But don't want to shoot for lofty goals, but I mean that's something that I would like to use my passion for in working with that unit as well.
Thank you, Miguel.
Getting to know Tara, who is the unit director of the pantry on a personal level, both being members of Alpha Chi Omega. She is an incredible human being. The things that she does for the pantry is amazing. I'm sure all of our candidates here can tell you how dedicated they are and how they want to help the pantry and be active senators to adopt them, so I'll let them speak for themselves. But I think what Miguel said, I think Entertainment Council would be a great and fun unit to adopt in terms of, I know Gabriel mentioned wanting events that could facilitate more revenue for our ASUCD budget. I think having Entertainment Council working collectively with that in ways that we could create revenue for our students. I know that I was very thankful for Entertainment Council when I got to see Vampire Weekend when they came freshman year. So I think in a way we can engage students into ASUCD and really advocate for ASUCD and get ASUCD back to the prevalency in student lives through ways and means that we are familiar every day. I mean, we listen to music when we study, we listen to music when everyone's raving about going to Coachella or music events. Like, music is the way that we can bridge the divide between the disconnect of ASUCD and students caring about what ASUCD represents them.
Thank you. Sarah, go ahead.
Like everybody else said, the pantry is obviously the most popular because it's just so amazing, and it does such great work. Tara's actually in B Stories with me right now, which is awesome. I've also gotten to talk to her about a lot of the different stuff that they've done. But also Project Compost. Like I think that they're so connected on campus, and they're so important. They drive around the little car everywhere with the eye on it, and it's really beautiful. But they are very well connected around campus, and they serve a really unique potential for making our campus more environmentally friendly. Also, KDVS, I think, is an amazing unit because they give voice to a lot of voices that are not always heard. I know one of my friends who's also in Regina Our Stories right now is starting her own talk show, which is amazing. Like, what other campus, I actually have no idea, but like a lot of student voices have this opportunity to be heard through this amazing radio station. I would definitely like to see KDVS get a lot more listeners because I know a lot of my friends have great shows on there and play awesome music, and they're just a great unit in its entirety.
Thank you, Sarah. So now starting with Gabriel, going to your right. The idea that ASUCD has become irrelevant has been circulating around the campus. Many think that the administration should be given the task of running all the units rather than having student government do it. What is your take on this, and how is ASUCD still relevant?
So, as far as having the administration run all the units, I think often that goes away from what a lot of students still talk about, which is a lack of representation. And that's not to take away from the administration, but often the administration are in a position where they don't get a lot of student interaction, and that becomes a miss. Which I'm aware ASUCD is known for, which ASUCD's biggest issue recently has been a lack of representation, but I know that there's been effective and active efforts to reach out to communities and better represent students. And then also speaking of, I'm sorry, what was the last part of the question, John?
The second part was, how is ASUCD still relevant?
So ASUCD is still relevant. So how ASUCD is still relevant? ASUCD is still very relevant in a plethora of ways. The only downside is that a lot of the ways aren't necessarily very aren't facing a lot of the students, or we're not making those things public. As far as a lot of the activism that's happening in and around campus, it's happening with a lot of ASUCD students or a lot of previous ASUCD students that are trying to make things happen in and around campus, as well as also a lot of the commissions are very actively advocating for a lot of students. Most recently with the ECAC, they recently, one of the students recently brought up a petition to create a space for international students, simply because the International House is not necessarily funded or created by UC Davis, but by the city of Davis, and creating a safe space and a space to foster for students to feel comfortable in those spaces. So I think in many ways ASUCD is still very relevant in those ideas as far as social interactions, those kind of things. It's just a matter of ASUCD going out there and reaching out to students and communicating what's happening in our meetings.
Thank you.
So I think if we leave this task to the administration, we lose a few things. One of them is money. We're cheap labor. And if we leave this to the administration, we have to spend an extraordinary amount more money, as well as we take away from the student experience. This is an extraordinary experience for students to gain that knowledge of leadership, to gain that knowledge of working with the team. I'm looking forward to the experience that I'm going to have in this next year. I've talked to senators, I've talked to people from commissions, I've talked to people from units, and they've told me how amazing it is, as well as how stressful as it can be, but how much they've gone away with this experience. The other reason why I think we are still legitimate and we are still relevant is we're here to be representative of the students because we are the students. We understand what the students want. We understand what the students need. We know what their complaints are, and that is why we are here. We're here to make a difference for the students. We're here to make a difference for this campus as a whole, and I think we're the most in touch with our students, so therefore we would hold, I think, a substantial advantage over administration in knowing what actions to take.
Thank you, Miguel. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to repeat, but it's definitely something that sounds true, that we're representative of the students, that we're more closely related to them, as Gabriel and Ennis said, that we get to be more involved with the students because we're there and the students can come to us directly. So, no, the administration should not take over it, straightforward. I want to tackle how ASUCD is still relevant. Gabriel kind of touched up upon it, but ASUCD does provide a lot of services that our students use on the daily. For example, like the Coho, Unitrans, stuff that really run and operate, and it's a big part of the students' lives. And also, a lot of the stuff that ASUCD does in terms of providing entertainment venues for students, for example, like as I mentioned before, the Entertainment Council getting concerts to happen here, having music groups, having performers come here, and also coordinating picnic day. It's kind of these things. That we should use to just remind the students, like, hey, we're putting this on. This is how we're still relevant, and also continuing to be communicative, to be available to those students, and just reminding them that we're there for them. But it's relevant because there's a lot that ASUCD handles in a Davis student's regular life, and it's just a matter and a collective responsibility for all of us just to remind the students of that.
Thank you.
Point blank, admin are not students. Students are students. So with each of our units, they need to be run by students. Students understand the workload of internships. They understand the workload of midterms. They understand the workload of trying to maintain grades and retain being a student. So if we give up that sacrifice of units running themselves, you give up the ability to connect with students on an interpersonal level. Additionally, when you forfeit the control of units to administration, you lose the legacy behind each of the units. There are alumni who've graduated recently. There are people who were proud to serve at the Coho. There are memories and family ties that come to being in charge of a unit. There are legacies and people who remember being promoted to managers and things like that at the Coho and the pantry and entertainment council and things like that. So when you forfeit the control to administration, they're not going to know what it means to be a student, why students choose these units to be a part of when they don't understand the passion. I mean, they could have graduated from Davis years ago, but the Davis of long ago is not the same Davis as it is today. Secondly, it takes away the legitimacy of the students who run the units. If say we're having a administration run a unit, then why should we care about the unit if it's not someone who understands our needs, who understands what being an Aggie means? In terms of ASUCD being relevant every day, I think that goes back into how ASUCD serves students every day and how students don't know the resources that they're getting every day. Just by walking through the Coho, you are enjoying an ASUCD service. By jumping on Unitrans to take the bus to go home for winter break, that is an ASUCD run service. So I think if we just show what it means for an association to give our resources to our students, that's what it means to remain relevant.
Thank you. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, so like everybody else said, admin are not students, and it's not democratic. Like, we are represented and voted for by the students, and we are part of the student body, and I think that's what's really different about, obviously, compared to admin, who are hired and run and have close contacts with UC Regents and do more political events. Also, they don't change with students. So like, our environment and our campus is constantly changing and constantly reinventing itself, because we are only here for 4 years, and there's a whole new, like, in 4 years there will be a whole new set of students with a whole new set of backgrounds and knowledge and different identities that they want to portray, and admin do not move that fast, so I don't know how they would be able to keep up with the change that we're constantly going through. And then students are also with the same like thing in mind about campus climate and representing ourselves, is that we can advocate for ourselves, and as students, as student representatives, we can advocate for our peers. And things like Fund the UC that happened earlier this year was run by a lot of people who are involved in ASUCD, who understand what the students' dialogue and understand how to fix these issues and get students involved, because we are all friends with one another. If it was an admin running that, I don't know if they could get the same kind of involvement out of students, because they're not as relatable. And this also is great for students to be involved in ASUCD, because it's real world experience. We're not going to be like, as soon as we currently live in the federal government system. We live in a government system all the time. It's good that we can relate to it on a separate level through our school and get this different experience, and then go out into the real world and have some knowledge of it, because we have a smaller form of it reproduced here.
Thank you. Siobhan, go ahead.
Excuse me. So I think that ASUCD definitely is still relevant in students' lives, and a lot of times students don't know what ASUCD runs. I'd be surprised to meet a student who doesn't use Unitrans, Safe Ride, Tipsy Taxi, the Coho, or any of the units that ASUCD runs. And ASUCD is still legitimate and relevant in students' lives because of that. And in regards to whether or not administration should be taking over these units and should be taking over what ASUCD runs, I think simply because students are on the same wavelength, students should be running these units, because they're by the students and they're more importantly for the students, because the students are the ones who are using the pantry and Unitrans, and they know exactly what we need. And handing that off to administration, I think that the caliber of the units, strictly because there's a disconnect between administration and students, because of that the caliber of these units will take a hit.
Thank you, Siobhan. So for the last question of the night, we'd just like to know a little bit more about your personality. So starting with Miguel, what has been the most satisfying moment in your life?
Wow. Wow.
Like all 20 years?
Yeah, we got time to think.
Oh my gosh. Give me a minute, because I'm like really thankful for a lot of things in life.
Which one?
The first one. Obviously the first one.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm gonna say it's the most can you repeat the question? Sorry.
So the question is, what has the most satisfying moment in your life been?
Okay, well, one of the most satisfying moment in my life is probably like an ongoing one, actually, and it really is when I perform with the Lounge Lizards. I've already made it abundantly clear that I sing for the Lounge Lizards, but just being able to perform, music is a passion of mine. I mean, I have no interest in going into the music industry at all, but just being able to perform and be able to cover some popular songs and really bring meaning I'm like on a cloud nine whenever I get on the stage and be able to perform music, and that's just, yeah, there's really no other words to explain it. I love music. It drives what I do in other outlets of my life, and yeah, that's all I can say, performing and being able to do that, so yeah.
Thank you.
I think it would be when I got hired for my second job, because I'm working 2 jobs. So as a working student, it's a very gratifying feeling knowing that I can balance both my student life and a financial responsibility. I guess tied into that too would be getting my first paycheck, because it's really nice to know that the skills that I'm learning here in the university, not only in the classroom but also in my internships and things like that, can go towards real life attainable goals. And I think that's what an idea that really needs to infiltrate this campus is, that what we're learning here is not only applicable to just here, it's going to help us when we're getting jobs, things like that. And by learning to balance both my jobs and my schoolwork, I think has been the most satisfying in terms of thinking like I can be an adult. Like I could kind of, that's kind of a really big assumption, assuming that I could be a functioning adult. But I think it's giving me this inspiration to know that the big goals out there and the things that are out there in terms of career accomplishment, things like that, are attainable as long as you put in enough work. And that there are people who want us in jobs, there are people who want us to work for them, to give them the work that we can produce. So I think that's been the most satisfying for me, was maintaining both my work life and my student life.
Thank you, Jen. Sarah.
I guess what's most satisfying to me is an ongoing event, just like Miguel said, which is fulfilling my passions, and that it takes various forms, but mostly it's around social justice. So like I'm a part of a lot of different clubs and organizations on campus that have to do with social justice. One of those being Vagina Our Stories, which is an amazing production that highlights...
I didn't understand.
Sorry, computer. Should I reiterate? Okay. Yeah, so it is a production that highlights gendered violence on our campus and also talks about the empowerment of genders, as well as just bringing to light those issues. But also I'm involved in California Student Sustainability Coalition, where I planned this amazing conference last quarter, which was surrounding social justice and environmental justice and how those two groups interact and how they're related. And also in Stand-In Anti-Genocide Club, pretty self-explanatory. Those are just a few things that I'm involved in. I have a commitment to being involved, kind of an addiction, but it's awesome. And I think that each one of the things that I do on campus really fulfills like my passions, again, and that relates to social justice, and that really is satisfying when I can see a visible change and advocate for what I really feel like is important.
Thank you, Sarah. So, Sivan, what is the most satisfying moment in your life?
So, kind of echoing what Miguel said, these past couple of years I've gotten into cycling with my father, and he's gotten very, very, very good at it. But it's the small experiences of going out on a ride with him and coming back, and it's something that I haven't necessarily been able to do as much at Davis, obviously because I'm away with my parents. But being away from my parents kind of makes me cherish that experience more, because you get to see, and that echoes what Danielle said, because it kind of gives you hindsight, and it shows you that that we all grow as people and that we're all a work in progress. And what is the most satisfying experience now? Spending time with my family and doing something athletic with my dad will just be a stepping stone, and there are definitely going to be more satisfying experiences in my life, and that we're all just growing, and we're experiments in living, and we're all growing. I don't know. I'm done.
Mine probably easily has to be in UC Davis. Personally, I'm a very non-traditional student. I'm a little bit of a re-entry and a transfer student. As a student I'm from Minnesota. I moved out here 3 years ago. As a student that went to college out of high school, got the boot real fast, and then went through this process of learning myself and some struggles and personal struggles, to now move out of California by myself just on a whim because I needed something to do, to now end up back in UC Davis and actually not failing out. I think really speaks to my personal character. and a little testament to my perseverance and persistence and patience as well. As well as also, it's just like, it's a story that I love to share simply because it speaks to the ability of anyone to make it. You just gotta go through a little bumps and trials and tribulations, so.
Thank you, Gabriel. Dennis?
Well, this is a very difficult question, but I think I would have to say just any experience that I've been able to actually impact somebody's life and change it for the better. In my current field of study, it would be in the medical field. And I'm fortunate enough to be involved in one of our 7 student-run clinics here at UC Davis, and that is Shifa Community Clinic, where we serve the uninsured and underserved South Asian and Middle East population. That being said, we treat anybody from any background. And to have a family come in, for instance, last week I had a family come in of the Middle East region, and they didn't speak English, and I spoke Arabic as well. So we were able to connect on that level, and I was able to facilitate the whole entire discussion for the day. I took them in. I was able to understand what their chief concern was, their struggles, and knowing that I was able to impact their life for the better and to have their sincere gratitude, even when I feel like I didn't do much, when the mom thanks you, when the son thanks you, when the nephew thanks you, and this is the most genuine form of thank you. There's really nothing better than that. And it's one of the main reasons why I'm actually in this profession. This is one of the main reasons why I would like to do this for the rest of my life, because knowing that you could take someone that's struggling, that's going through these hard times, that's coming to you for help, and knowing that you can help them, that you can literally make the decision from life and death, it's unbelievable. And I want to continue to be able to help these people, especially these underserved people that have nowhere to turn but us. And yeah.
Thank you. So this concludes the senatorial candidates question and answer forum for tonight. If you guys could just go along the table, starting with Ennis, introduce yourselves again, just your names, that would be awesome. So go ahead.
Camera no? The camera yes. Ennis Trash, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
Gabriel Johnson.
Savan Nahabedian.
Sarah Priano.
Danielle May Santiago.
And Miguel Guerrero.
Great. So these are your senatorial candidates for winter quarter 2015 elections. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just job and people like,
What'd you say? I get everything from her.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to first talk about the rules. So welcome to the ASUCD question and answer forums hosted by the Elections Committee.
Yay!
For the executive candidates, Mariah Watson and Robin Huey. Mariah Watson as the president candidate and Robin Huey as the vice president candidate. I want to remind the candidates that when you speak, please speak into the camera. You guys have unlimited amount of time to answer the questions. However, for the sake of your audience, please keep it short. And without further ado, I'm going to start with the first easy question. Please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what slate you are representing, major, year, and any other relevant information.
Relevant information. Okay, cool. We don't have to speak in the we right now. So hello everyone, my name is Mariah Kayla Watson. I am a 3rd year International Relations and Philosophy double major. Relevant information, I used to be an ASUCD senator and I was president pro tempore and I termed out last fall.
Hi everyone, my name is Robin Huey. I am a 4th year landscape architecture major, community regional development minor. I am running on the SMART slate. I'm a 4th year, going to go into my 5th year for sure. And relevant information, I'm a current ASUC senator. I'm also the Senate President pro tempore. And this is my last term as a senator.
Great, thank you.
Cool.
So for the second question, what do you hope to accomplish as ASUCD president? And similarly, what do you hope to accomplish as ASUCD vice president?
Okay, so you can go online and see our platforms definitely and lay that out. And I think I speak for the entire executive office, potentially the controller as well. Our biggest goal, period, point blank, regardless of what our platforms may say or do, is that we want to make ASUCD relevant again. We've been senators, we've run before, we've gone through and we've talked to you all, we've drilled our platforms into you and said this is what's going to make the association better, but at the end of the day, I don't know if you all would agree with that. And so I think our biggest plan with each and every single one of our platforms is to make sure that we regain your trust, that voter turnout is no longer 10%, 15%, 20%, but upwards of 50%. We want to be relevant in your life every day.
I think another part of this is like the how. I think a big thing that we want to work on is really looking at our ASUCD services. We are meant to serve students. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. Everything that we earn in the association should be going back to the students and really serving what student needs are. I think another aspect of this is making ASUC more accessible, really going to the students. Like something that Mariah and I have been talking about is doing more, open student forums, allowing us to be out there in a public space, have students come to us, talk about our plans, in the open, not just on the third floor, but really bringing ASUCD to the students.
Yeah, and to go off of that, we already have plans within the 10th week. You can look out for the event page, even though there's now a 500 person limit to invite. But what we plan to do is we want to, before we're even confirmed, if we are elected, we want to come to you with our plans, a full timeline, what each of our platforms are, who we've already talked to, and we want to be actively critiqued. So before we get in there, before we go on that third floor and do whatever we do, we want to actively engage you all and figure out if some of our platforms are even relevant to you or you want to change them or you want to help and collaborate with us. So I think we can briefly just go into our platforms. Do you want to start with the first one?
Yeah, so our first platform relates to mental health, and not just like mental health, resources and information, but really going into our educational settings and looking at the classroom environment and how mental health is addressed in educational settings. I think a big part of being a student is also being healthy, and not just physically healthy, but also mentally, emotionally, spiritually, everything, holistically. And part of that is also like looking at how professors understand mental health. I know that there was a report done by Academic Senate regarding students and their relation with professors when mental health issues happen. And normally professors are the first to be contacted, and oftentimes it's too late. So we want to work on proactive measures in making sure the classroom environment is a space for students to feel comfortable talking about mental health issues, knowing that their professors support them and that there are resources that are actively being promoted within classroom settings.
And our next level would be, again, referring back to our previous point, our overall mission is making ASUCD relevant again. So something that we want to do is we want to actively engage you all with ASUCD evaluations. So what that means is on your MyUC Davis or on the ASUCD website or anything like that, we're going to have surveys where you can click and say, this isn't working, I don't want my student fees going to this, and just be really frank and open and honest with us, as well as comment boxes, open forums, student focus groups, and a number of other things that we have already tested and tried and have worked. And I know some critiques of this are, well, students don't know the inner workings of ASUCD units. They don't understand the budget, they don't understand all these things. Our annual budget online isn't even updated, so how are students supposed to engage in a critical way? Well, if you're not using a unit, if you don't even know what that unit is or that they exist or their location and you don't know how to access it, then obviously we're doing something wrong. That means that our marketing needs to be up. That means that it's not a service that's serving you every day. And that's something that needs to be critiqued. So even these little things will help us improve ASUCD.
The next part is addressing how we relate to our campus, how we relate to other student leaders, other student organizations, other bodies on campus. And part of that is collaboration. I noticed that we have 2 housing days coming up, one by ASUCD and one at the Student Recruitment Retention Center. And these are sort of the over-programmings that we've noticed over the past years. And we really want ASUCD to be a space where students feel comfortable collaborating with us and also using our resources so we can benefit, further benefit student orgs that are actually doing really, really amazing, valuable things. We want to highlight that and bring that to the attention of all students, because as ASUC we represent all students, And why not, highlight a lot of the great things that students are doing?
There are a large number of ways to collaborate. Let's face it, student clubs, y'all just do things better. And so we saw a perfect example of that with the open mic where 6-Bits was involved and a lot of our different units, and Entertainment Council has been doing a fantastic job of collaborating. And so we want to expand that into other areas. How do we get involved with athletics and our student athlete populations? How does ASUCD get involved with Greek life beyond our traditional safe boats or things that have happened in the past? How do we have sustainable relationships with these other entities and student life centers on campus that have helped you be retained and help your everyday life and what you love on campus? We want to be a part of that, and we want to support you in your endeavors. Can we do the next part?
Great. Well,
More
we can go all day. Moving forward with a solid plan, and a lot of the audience really likes that. But can you describe really how much experience you've had with ASUCD and why you are qualified?
Okay, I would love to. I'll take a stab at it first. Okay. So I have literally been involved with ASUCD since my first year. I served as a commissioner on the Ethnic and Cultural Affairs Commission. Then I was promoted or elected by my peers to be the vice chair of the Ethnic Cultural Affairs Commission. I was an intern and chief of staff for Senator Allison Segala as she worked on platforms and projects such as Vote-Chella, which featured student groups on campus, and I was that was my first project I ever did, and I contacted unit directors, and that was all within my first 2 quarters. I then ran for ASUCD Senate, so I've been involved within that capacity as well. My 2 units who I've worked with extensively and love very much, the pantry, I established relationships with Sodexo, so now they have their buying power and Swipe Out Hunger that benefits them now. I also worked with the advocacy units back when it was Lobby Corps, and then helped it in its merger and transitioning to our new Office of Advocacy and Student Representation. Oh, goodness gracious. I've served on committees such as SFACT, which deals with different student fees and services and things of that nature. Oh my goodness. There's been a lot, and you can see it, and I was #1 endorsed by the California Aggie when I first ran, and I hope I've made them proud. I know some of them are in the room.
Okay, so I guess I would say my first real exposure to ASUC was my 3rd quarter of my first year. And I came in as a really angry student at an ASUC Senate meeting. It had to do with past issues regarding ethnic grads. So I started off as a student who really hated the association. And the only reason why I really warmed up to it was because I got involved as an intern for ASUC Senator Allison Segala. That's how I met Mariah. And I kind of followed her. I helped with her campaign. I followed her around and helped her, go to commission meetings. I've attended so many Senate meetings in the past. And when I was asked to run for Senate in my 2nd year, I actually declined. And I actually spent an entire year figuring out if this was the right space for me, the right direction for me, if my heart was in it. So I spent an entire year going to random commission meetings, attending Senate meetings, really getting to know the association before I was actually elected as an ASUC senator. I was also endorsed #1 by the California Aggie during that time. And now I'm still an ASUC senator. I'm now Senate President pro tempore. As Mariah kind of highlighted, I've been involved with a lot of meetings and discussions and committees and units, sitting through commission meetings and long discussions, meeting with students regarding issues that they have with ASUCD. And yeah,
yeah, we've been involved in ASUCD a long time. And I think to go back to why that makes you qualified, you can have a whole bunch of titles, but you've never done anything within those positions. I think Robin and I have done I'd say a good job, of engaging students, of staying really active within our communities and connecting with our constituencies. Outside of the 3rd floor, we still hold leadership positions within a lot of these places that helped get us elected and have supported us. So I think that's a really integral part. And I think why the executive office seemed like the logical next step for me is when you've been involved in association for as long as we have, you've seen it in its darkest days. I'm talking about cutting units my first day getting elected. Experimental college, and then the first meeting back, literally the first meeting back, we established it again with a budget and, had lots of different meetings over winter break. And so we've seen how bad it can be. And we have acquired the skill set through our experiences and things of that nature to be able to handle these fires, to put them out quickly, and to I don't know, to serve you to the best of our abilities. We have connections with the administration. They know our names, we know their names, we have their contact information, some of their personal phone numbers, to be able to quickly get in contact with them to figure out how we can solve these issues and how we can resolve them. And I think no one, well, I won't say no one, but senators who have been president pro tempore understand what it's like to schedule meetings. We understand the association and its structure and how things work. And so I think if you want an executive team who understands the inner workings and also has the dream to change it and make it better to serve you, then I say vote for us.
Thank you. So, considering you are running unopposed, what does this reflect about the current state of ASUCD? Or can you describe the current state of ASUCD in your own words?
In terms of getting retention rates, is that what we're talking about specifically?
No, just what does this reflect about the current state of ASUCD?
Okay. Do you want to take first and then I'll end? Because you know I want to answer first.
Yeah. I guess there's a lot of ways to look at this. I want to say it really simple. There's not enough love. Like, there's not enough love within the association. I mean, if you've been a part of it, you notice that like some unit directors have never met each other. Maybe like you can be a part of the association as, you know, a commission member, but you won't know every aspect of the association and how we relate. I think there needs to be more things that really, you know, want students to be part of the association, know that, for them to know that it's a friendly, I mean, it has a potential to be a friendly place, like yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of things and a lot of ways to like view what's happening within the association. Some of it's like poor outreach. Some of it is just, we aren't serving students anymore, like the way that we used to. Maybe we need to really evaluate how our units are doing, how they're reaching out to students, how, you know, if we are offering relevant experiences that students find useful for their future careers.
Right.
We are an association that was founded on like philanthropic, you know, efforts and education. I mean, that's within our constitution. Are we still? Yeah, is it still what we're doing?
Right.
And yeah, like I think at this point, like we need everyone to get involved and, you know, really reevaluate every piece of the association, whether you're involved or not. Like really think about how you would like the association to look like for you and really communicate that with us, because this is something that we care about right now. I mean, and forever. I mean, I've been with the association for so long, but it's something that we care about. We want to know how you want the association to look like.
Right. I think one of the biggest reasons I've been retained and why I think a lot of students haven't been retained is that this has helped me completely. Every aspect of my life, career, everything I've wanted to do. I didn't do it to build the resume. Nope. Didn't do it for the student pay. Nope. But I know that those are factors with students wanting to get involved with the association, especially on the legislative and judicial and executive side, is that they want something to put on their resume. Let's be honest, we pay a lot of tuition, we want to get out of here in 4 years, and every single moment, every quarter, every hour that you have is precious time. And you want to make sure that these are things that will benefit you in the long run and won't stress you out, won't make you hate the association so much that you regret your time here. And so I think a really big issue is, again, going back to making ASUCD relevant, making sure that we have internship programs, that it's not just about volunteering your time, but making sure that we potentially have transcript notation. So this is something that your employers can see time and time again. And so it's these little things, and I think my VP, and I would prefer to say my has really eloquently stated what we need. We need love, we need respect, we need a lot of the things that we talk about within the communities or these different places where we have community agreements where we strive for, even if you disagree. And I mean, we have people who do not disagree. I'm not asking you to forego your morals and your political stance and everything else in order to be a part of this association and make it work, but I'm asking that we talk about it in a way that we still feel respected at the end of the day. And again, I think that's something that we have done and that we strive to do and that we want to bring to the rest of the association. So.
Well, thank you. So the next question is, the idea that ASUCD has become irrelevant has been circulating around the campus.
Mm-hmm.
Many think that the administration should actually take the task of running all the units. What is your take on this, and how can we convince the student population that ASUCD is still relevant to them?
I'll take this first. So if you watch the candidates forum, I think they each said it very well, but I'll just summarize a couple points about why I think that's not the best idea. I think, and and I think Danny May really harped on this point about legacy and what it means to have a student-run, student-driven, student-work, student-supported, student. Our motto, which was in a resolution that never really went anywhere, but we're going to bring it back, that we voted on by the Senate, is for Aggies, by Aggies. That's kind of our motto. That's what we do. And we are the most connected. When you have students who can contact somebody within the coho, and I know people bring up the coho a lot as an example, but that's one of the most popular units. But you have KDVS, you have Aggie Reuse, you have Campus Copies, Costco Notes, Post Office, you potentially have Aggie Threads coming back, all these different units that need that quick communication with their president, with their executive office, with their Senate table. Who better to communicate with than your peers, who understand when you have a midterm, when you have all of these different things going on and you need to have a meeting at 2 o'clock in the morning. These things do happen. Who better than to have a student who understands you, who understands the student needs, who's connected, who holds office hours in buildings and places that are accessible to you, who isn't in a building where you have to schedule a meeting with a secretary to do this, to do that. You can have my telephone number. You can have my email. You probably have me on Facebook. It's just a different level of accessibility that we haven't seen with administration to the average student who doesn't necessarily have a title. Administration has worked with us in the past. They continue to work with us, and I'm not downing them. I'm not saying that they're not capable of doing it, but this is a student government and a student association where your student fees come to us. Who better than to have your peers who are with you also paying those fees and to manage it and have you held accountable to a different level. I think Sarah also mentioned, one of the Senate candidates before, we're elected by you. If that's not more representation, I don't know what is. And it's unfortunate that we don't always have stacked with 6 executive tickets to vote for, and your options sometimes come down to 1, but at the end of the day, we are accountable to you. Whether you vote for me and you don't vote for me, you are my constituency. You are who I am held accountable to. I could potentially be fired or vetoed by you. You know, these are things that you can do if I'm not doing my job, if we're not doing our job, if our association is failing you.
Yeah, I think Mariah captured it beautifully. But I think a big thing that is that I found very unique about UC Davis, or ASUCD specifically, is how many programs on its campus are student-run and student-initiated. Like, I came from the Student Recruitment Retention Center. I used to be staff there, and I learned about the whole history of getting it founded. But UC Davis is extremely unique in that we have so many student-run and initiated programs. It's the level of like student empowerment opportunities are like amazing here. Like I saw in like a I saw this quote somewhere. I think it was like Humans of Davis, where a professor talked about how like students don't come here just to get their degree, their education. Like, education happens outside of the classroom. You gain experience, and I don't know where else I could get the experience I got. You know, as I am now, if I wasn't involved with ASUCD, like having it run by students like gives so much more accessibility for students to be involved, for us to communicate like one-on-one about our needs. And because things are student run, there's so much potential for it to really meet like what students need. And that is sort of like the direction that I really see ASUC going toward, is having those personal connections again, students, to see like where we can go.
Great. So another question asked by your audience is that, what do you think, what are commissions and committees? What do you think their purpose is, and what do you think your roles and responsibilities as an executive office is to those committees and commissions?
Okay. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the structure of ASUCD, on our legislative side, we have commissions and we have committees. So we have various committees that do different things that are a little more specific. So some of these committees could be the International Undergraduate Student Committee. These committees help us figure out, engage like different populations on campus in a different way. Some of these committees are philanthropic in what they do, and they're all about programming. You have SHOC, so Student Health and Wellness Committee, which, you know, in their previous time was working on a resource guide, and you have a lot of these other things that committees do. So they are subordinate bodies to the ASUCD Senate and things of that nature. And then you have commissions. Woo, love commissions. I came from a commission. And so what they do is they are the first round of legislative bodies who review everything that we do. They also put on programs and things of that nature. And so they help keep us connected and relevant in other places. So you have 12 senators who vote on things, and you hope they're connected in every single place on campus, but let's be honest, there are things that they're not knowledgeable about. And so our commissions and our committees are really, really important because they help retain these knowledge in specific areas and like hold us accountable in different places, like ethnic and cultural affairs, internal affairs, external affairs, which deals with the city of Davis and things of that nature. I don't want to keep talking if you want to. Sure.
So I guess the question was going back to how like we relate to our commissions and committees. Commissions, of course, legislative branch, they hold the Senate table accountable, or not? Yeah, they provide advice for a lot of like legislation. They vote on it, and Mariah captured it perfectly of how like they help us outreach into like very specific areas of our campus. And I think another part that we can go extra, I mean, it doesn't say in our bylaws or rules or anywhere, but I think it's also important that as executive office, we should still maintain our relationship and connections with our commissions and committees, and really, be involved with the projects that they're working on and support them in, whatever that, they need support in. I think oftentimes, like, we aren't, required as exec to actually, interact with them directly. But I still think that's really important.
Yeah, I will say this. I think Max has done a fantastic job. Max, before he does anything, before he sends legislation, reviews legislation, re-refers it, he checks in with his chairs, period. At Senate, he says, do you want this ledge? Do you not want this ledge? And if they say they want it, it goes to them. If they don't want it, then he won't put it there. And so I think Max is a really good example of how I think we as an executive office in Armando as well should definitely be checking in, making sure this is something that they want or they don't want. And I think that's a brilliant way to stay engaged. So showing up at Senate meetings, being there and asking them, not through email, but being there, gauging their interactions. If they're like, then we should probably reconsider what we're doing. Is that cool?
Thank you. So a lot of our audience has realized that healthy cooperation is essential to all democratic bodies, but given the impending smart supermajority in the legislative and executive offices, how do you preserve the healthy cooperation of those who aren't part of the smart slate?
Whew, I knew this question was going to come up. I think people, and I'm gonna be nice. I'm gonna be honest. SMART stands for Students Matter, Activism, Retention, Teamwork, and we have gotten a lot of critiques about not being well representative of our campus, that we don't engage different communities, that we stay within the Student Community Center and that is the only place we know, that is the only place we go, and that's the only place we campaign to. And I think if you look at our Senate table, at least the candidates who we've talked to, who we've grown with, and who we've engaged, they're from Greek life. They're STEM students. They haven't worked in the SRC, the CCC. They volunteer in these different places, but they're not specifically from those places. And I, as a smart senator, worked with everybody. I mean, on different campaigns, and even won an award called the Wattman Award, where Katie Sherman, who was an active member of the Now Party, worked together during budget hearings to figure out what logistically, what worked and what didn't work. Janesh, Gareth Smythe, one of like my greatest friends ever. I've worked with him extensively. And so these are relationships that I have still maintained, still retained. I mean, even Ryan Wonders, when we were on the table, we don't agree on most things politically, but we have worked together. I come to him for advice and things of that nature. So I think the only issue is that when we stereotype certain slates, or that we say, oh, they're a part of a slate, they're not going to deal with us, and that we don't reach out and we don't engage each other. And that goes for us as well when we stereotype independents or whoever they are and say, oh, we're not going to communicate with you. That's not what we do. But coming from my background, and I'll bring in my personal piece, I'm African American, visibly of color and things of that nature. And a lot of people come up to me on campus and they're like, I'm just nervous that when I come into the Student Community Center, people won't receive me well. Well, how are we supposed to communicate if everyone's too scared to walk through the door? And so that's something that I've experienced, and I've felt the negative effects of that, and that's something that I'm not going to carry. I'm going to put everybody in a room. We've already been planning on it, having leadership retreats and things of that nature where we come together more holistically and say, talk to me. I don't care where you come from. I don't care what you're doing. I just want to be a part of it, and I want to know how, as an executive office, we can support you in it or critique each other to make sure that I'm being held accountable regardless of your slate. And that goes for inside my slate, too. We don't all vote the same way.
I think it's also important to remember that I started off as a student here. I didn't come in to UC Davis Smart Slate.
We didn't wear red.
Yeah, I don't even like the color red. I'm so sorry for people. Yeah, anyways, but yeah, I mean, we are still students. Like, we are Aggies. We are UC Davis students. We experience a lot of things that other students experience. And as Mariah said about stereotyping, sometimes, you know, when we just view just the slate as our identity, it's almost dehumanizing in a way. And I work really hard to make sure that, you know, personal connections is what it's about, not the slate that, you know, that I'm running with. It's about who I am and how I relate to you as a person.
Right.
I think that's really important to like remember.
Yeah.
I remember like when I was asked before, like, why am I running with SMART? It just happened that a lot of my personal values aligned with SMART. Students matter, activism, retention, teamwork. A lot of the things I'm involved with and the values that, you know, are held in those aligned with the slate. It just seemed natural for me to be a part of this coalition. But yeah, really emphasizing that it's about our personal connections, like who we are as students.
Yeah, that's why we want to move away from the slate rhetoric. I don't know if you've all seen it. There's a video, I'm in love with the SMART Co. You can Google it. We really want to move to this coalition model where SMART is a hub for progressive students who want to be involved and engage the university in a different capacity. We have people who are not SMART senators, will never be SMART senators, are not SMART commissioners, you know, all these different people who want to work with us, see our progressive values, and so that's kind of what we want to do. We don't always want to be so engaged with elections and all of these other things, which is why we think this is a really interesting time in elections where we haven't had to go out and sell ourselves, but we've spent more time engaging you all, individually messaging you, developing surveys and things of that nature to figure out how we can better serve you and move away from this whole like slate mentality. If you're not on my team, then you're not on my squad, you know, that whole thing, and move to becoming a coalition of students who want to bring ASUCD and bring UC Davis into this new, better campus climate for everybody, regardless of the color that you wear. Whatever color you want to wear, you wear that color. Doesn't have to be red.
Thank you. Well, election turnouts have been declining over the past few terms. What do you think the problem is, and how do you intend to increase election visibility in the future?
I guess I've always seen, I guess what has happened in the last election and this election is sort of a symptom of a bigger issue that's happening within the association. There's a lot of pieces that go into what is happening with this election. Some part outreach, some part how ASUCD is viewed, some part of how ASUCD outreaches to students and whether students know that their units or services that they see are part of the association or not. There's a lot of pieces to what's happening right now. Another thing that could be happening is just the complexity of how ASUCD is right now. In the other, well, a lot of the questions for the senators address like budget. I think that's a huge issue that sort of like bogs down what we're capable of doing as student government. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of pieces to what's happening right now.
Yeah, I think in the past with different elections, we've had up to 3-4 slates in our history where you have people who are bringing in members of the UC Davis community from all over, and you have maybe 26 senators running, you have 3 exec tickets, and there's a lot more places on campus that aren't normally tapped from ASUCD, and I use tap like lightly. People who are engaged in student clubs that you're visiting that are like, oh, I don't even know what ASUCD is, and it's when you make that classroom presentation, which you can't do anymore, or you make that student club presentation where people finally start asking questions like, wait, my student fees go towards ASUCD? Wait, you're more than just Unitrans and Coho? And so then students are like, oh, this is really relevant. This is why I want this person who represents my values and my needs to be in that seat. And so I think when you have this decrease in retention of students who maybe want to go from being a commissioner or a committee or being in KDVS or being in the pantry and potentially wanting to run for Senate, when they're not being retained, we're not having senators or people who feel like they can adequately do this job. To be completely honest, you can pick up the book and you can learn on the job, which I think a lot of students have been discouraged from doing with all of these different articles that come out saying that, oh no, there's another fire, there's another crisis in ASUCD, and they're wondering, can I handle this? And I'm saying that if you're a student who cares, if you're willing to put the time and effort in to learn and engage your peers and things of that nature, and also like administration to learn, then you can be a senator, you can run, you can be in the seat with us, you can engage this university, but that message isn't coming across. And so I think that what we as an executive team are going to do to engage students, to make ASUCD relevant, to get them to want to vote, it's a chain of things. As we were just talking to Janice, who is our ASUCD business manager, in a previous meeting, and we were saying that we're going to come in with a master calendar of our entire term and plot. We're going to have a forum here, we're going to have a forum here, we're going to go to this club here, we're going to do this club here. So we're not just engaging you when we're trying to get your vote, but engaging you throughout the entire period and letting you know what's happening. Making sure that ASUCD newsletter that's talking about things that are affecting your everyday life is going out to more people than just the commissioners and senators and things of that nature. So yeah.
Thank you. So what are some academic policies? Because after all, UC Davis is a student university for the students, and it's for academic progress. What are some academic policies you would like to reform from within the campus, and do you have plans to increase our academic senate involvement to facilitate this?
Oh, can I please take this question?
Yes.
I'm just going to take it really quickly.
Yeah,
You can
just
take
go
it.
for
Okay,
it.
so one of my platforms when I was running for ASUCD Senate was mid-quarter evaluations. Now, maybe some of you have had mid-quarter evals in your class. Maybe you haven't. Part of the reason is that our academic senate, who is not held accountable to anyone but the academic senate of the UC system going up, so not even our chancellor truly has jurisdiction over the academic senate. We certainly do not. We just have appointees that we can bring there and hopefully enlighten the academic senate and these like tenured professors and things of that nature about the situation that students have within the classroom. But I think the first step before even figuring out academic policies that we want is making a relationship that works in managing our rapport with academic senate. Making sure that when we bring a proposal to the table with resolutions or in whatever capacity we bring it in, that they don't laugh at us, look at us and just say like, you don't come here, you don't understand the inner workings. So making sure they know our face, they know our credibility, and they know that we have the student support behind us. I will say mid-quarter evaluations is still a valuable option that I'm still working on. I have a proposal written and I'm ready to push it through whenever Academic Senate is ready to have me at one of their meetings.
I know within ASUCD, our Office of Advocacy and Student Representation, a lot of effort is being made to get student representation within Academic Senate. So there's a lot of committees and pieces of Academic Senate that looks at different aspects of educational, educational spaces and services. I mean, there's an idea, I mean, not an idea, but this past quarter, I've learned a lot about student-facilitated courses through former controller Rylan Schaefer. And I think that policy that Academic Senate established is sort of an example of how they're looking or engaging with student needs and like what students want out of their educational settings. And looking at those things and seeing that as a way for students to get engaged with Academic Senate. To look at Academic Senate policy or maybe have that precedent as an influence for what students can do to be involved with educational decision making. So yeah, there's a lot of ways that students can be involved with Academic Senate. We just have to keep pushing for those representation.
Yeah, and just some other plans. Casey Nguyen, who was a senator who was elected last election, has a platform to work on APSD, so academic probation and subject to dismissal. I have a couple of friends who have personally been affected by this, even in the last quarter. So making sure that in our capacity as an executive office that we work with that for making sure that we have early warning programs already established for students so they know before they get the letter saying, I'm sorry, but you're dismissed for a quarter. Making sure that there is a proper route and routine for students getting back into the association, getting their degree, and leaving UC Davis within 4 or 5 years. Another thing is academic forgiveness programs. We have really, really big dreams where potentially one day we'll have it so that students in leadership positions, so whether you're VP of recruitment for your sorority during fall, or you take on a really, really extraneous position in the SRRC where you're planning a whole entire conference or retreat in 1 quarter, or you're working with your club or you're trying to build the foundation of your club and you're president for the first time, making sure that there are programs that you can potentially take for 1 to 2 units to be able to make sure that you don't go on AP or SD because your unit count didn't match up. Making sure that you're learning time management and all of these different courses and curriculars that you'll get if you work in a particular office where they'll teach you over summer, but making that more accessible to our student leaders who are making campus life better for everyone through having these clubs, through giving their volunteer hours and things of that nature. Some other programs and policies will come up as you tell us what you need from us and how we can advocate better for you all. I'm sure we can figure out what would help us, but most importantly, we want to know what will help you. So,
thank you. The second issue is a really big one to our community, which is the ASUCD budget issue. How do you plan on addressing the ASUCD budget, seeing as how the executives write the budget? What are some new ideas that will allow you to bring more funds to ASUCD rather than slashing budgets for your class?
Sorry, I got really excited. This is something that hits close to home. So last budget hearings under the previous executive office, they had a grueling task, to say the very least, where they had to cut $100,000 from our operating budget, had to find it everywhere. Senators cut their pay, executive team cut their pay. It seemed like every single unit cut their subsidies, cut everything, and it was just a monstrous show where people were like, I don't know if I can function with this amount of money, but they've made it work, and we appreciate the units who were very helpful and transparent during that process. And so some ways, you asked, how do we not slash budgets, but how do we grow our resources and things of that nature? I think one thing that we don't necessarily, well, I'll say this. We have a fantastic alumni association from ASUCD that has been untapped. I mean, we have people who are working in Google, Yahoo, all of these tech start companies and all these things who accredit a lot of their success, or at least have it written on their resume that they have worked within ASUCD before. We have elected officials, people working in all different places in all different industries and fields who don't know how to connect to us or give back to us. And so I talked to Janice early on, again, our business manager who handles a lot of these types of things, about setting up a separate account on give.ucdavis.edu, which is a new website that they just launched, where there are various places where you can donate money, reaching out to all of our alumni. I'm talking as far back as I can get your LinkedIn. I'm going to contact you, invite you, give you a way to give back to the association, whether it's $1, $2, $300. If you want to give $1,000, that's cool. Maybe we can find a plaque somewhere. But engaging our alumni in a different way to make sure that there's a relationship with people who have benefited from ASUCD, who are successful in their endeavors right now and want to give back.
I guess in addressing the budget, there's actually going to be a Senate bill that really evaluates how we use student fees. So $8 of your tuition actually goes into ASUCD, and about other, like $30 more goes to specifically Unitrans. But specifically looking at student fees that go toward the association and knowing how to allocate that better. So that bill is going to get seen at Senate like next Thursday, because there hasn't really been many regulation in how money is managed. I know that other, like the talk of efficiency of how we manage money was discussed, but there hasn't really been a bill like this until now. So really looking at that, like seeing ways we can create these rules to make sure that money is allocated properly so that it goes into our reserves. Like our reserves went from, was it 1,200,000 to what now, 56,000 now? Or like 500,000? I mean, it has like significantly dropped to a really small amount, which is not really healthy or safe or sustainable for a 501c3 to have. Like we're supposed to have 30% of our operating budget be in our reserves, and we definitely do not have that. I think another other question of like growing money, I mean not growing money, but generating more revenue. I think part of that is also looking at how our units are actually serving students to make sure that we're serving students effectively, that they'd want to engage with their units. And I think that's another like aspect to look at besides the internal structure of how money is managed, but also looking externally of how like if the money that we're putting into our units is actually like benefiting students and like coming back and returning.
Yeah, and I think on another note, collaborations and partnerships, we've talked about it before, that there are 2 housing days going on right now, and a lot of other over-programming where we spend ASUCD funds, they spend their department funds, when we can come together, collaborate, and have different events while still maintaining ASUCD's autonomy. Like we talked about that before, how important that is to be student-run, student-driven, all these other things, but making sure that if there's a way where we can do it smarter, involve more students, and get even more help for you all, why not collaborate with them? If we're saving $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, or even $100 or $10 by collaborating with another person who could potentially take on that cost, we're sharing the cost, but we're increasing the benefits and maximizing our utility for all students. So I think there are other ways. We're definitely going to have a lot of meetings with different outside entities about how to strengthen our budget, to look at it holistically, to see what we need to do to make it so we're not always spending so much time on our budget instead of worrying about how we're serving you all. So some ways. We're still learning, and if you have options, we're willing to hear.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know it's been a long night, and we've talked a lot about salient issues, but we want to know a little bit more about yourself. So for the last question, who is your role model? No, who is your role model and why?
Oh. Okay.
Oh gosh.
How do I not cry when I answer this? I can go first if you want to think. Or do you want to go first?
I don't know.
All
I
right.
have a really cheesy response.
I'll go first. Yeah, I feel like this is going to be cheesy, and I don't know how many people are going to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. My mother, Lisa Elsie Watson, is a superstar. I mean, you talk about mothers who have worked tirelessly, given up their positions working in Apple in order to be a stay-at-home mom who was there every single night reading with me, telling me, you know, when I asked her for how do I spell that word, go look it up in the dictionary. You know, like making sure that she and my father like instilled values in me that I still hold to this day, and I owe everything to my parents, my mother, my dad, and everything else like that. But I think my mother has really shown me in a lot of ways throughout this entire association how important it is to be respectful, keep a level head, and at the end of the day, like, don't judge people for what they say, don't judge them on their actions, and always be open to learning and engaging people in a different way. There have been nights where I have been at Senate crying, just not even understanding how we have talked for 4 or 5 hours over the same thing and gotten nowhere, where people are yelling at each other like obscene things in the middle of Senate, where I have lost hope in a lot of capacity, and I have called her, picked up the phone, and just been like, Mom, like, talk to me. And she said, like, you're here for a reason. You're here to set an example. You're here to be the exception to the rule, to always push through and always smile and always be that person that people feel like they can come to, who's going to advocate for them and like hold your head high, because at the end of the day, you don't even know how many lives you're affecting, how many people in the room are changed by you not giving in to the madness and not giving in to the craziness. And so I know she's probably going to watch this and start crying. Please don't cry, Mom. But yeah, she's definitely my role model. I look up to her in a lot of different capacities, and she's taught me how to be a better person and how to always shoot for the bar, no matter who's setting it, exceed it. So my mom, definitely.
Oh my gosh, I might get emotional. Okay, so I guess my grandma would be one of my greatest role models. She passed away when I was a senior in high school, but she was one of the people who taught me the most about resilience, a lot about love, a lot about making sure my voice was heard. Like, my grandma struggled a lot, especially like immigrating out of China, a lot of her experiences within China, and just knowing her story and her resilience and coming to the United States gives me a lot of strength. I know within a lot of, I guess within like some like Asian cultures, boys aren't always favored, but like my grandma was always a huge advocate for how like girls within the family were treated. Like, she never made me feel inferior for being a woman. She always believed in my strength and power. And maybe she didn't agree with what I was doing, like what I was involved with all the time, but she always showed so much love and grace, and she really embraced like who I was. And it was really difficult losing her in high school, but I always like pushed through, and I think of her and how opinionated she were, and I know that sometimes I can be a little bit more reserved. But I always think of my grandma, like in the moments where I just need to like speak out about something that's really bothering me, because I know that she never let anything stop her from addressing what was wrong in a moment. So yeah, I always think of my grandma. Yeah.
Thank you, Kennedy. This concludes our question and answer forum for tonight. If you would like, please go ahead and introduce yourself again and what you're going to be running as.
Okay. Hello, everyone, again. Thanks for watching and staying up with us. My name is Mariah Kayla Watson, and I am running to be your next ASUCD president.
And thank you also. My name is Robin Huey, and I am running for vice president.
Thank you, candidates. And so for our viewers, now that you've seen and heard who our candidates are for winter quarter 2015 elections, go vote at elections.ucdavis.edu. They are your representatives. You have seen their willingness to serve you. Good night.
Vote, period. No, you can't put me in there right now. Respect my people. What is it? It's not successor.